This is Software Engineering Radio, the podcast for professional developers on the web at se-radio.net. SE Radio is brought to you by the IEEE Computer Society and by IEEE Software Magazine. Online at computer.org/software. This episode of SE Radio is brought to you by Braintree. If you think that your payment system exists solely for the purpose of transferring money from your customer's wallet to yours, think again. Braintree. Rethink payments. Learn more at braintreepayments.com/SE Radio.
So welcome everyone to the Software Engineering Radio today. I'm your host, Kim Carter, and today we've got guest Francois Raynaud. Francois Raynaud is the founder of DevSecOps conference. I ran a training at recently. He's actively involved in security automation projects supporting continuous delivery and currently working as the enterprise security architect for a global retailer. Preceded by 17 years at ASOS, Bedfar, Verizon Business, HSBC and RSA, where his consulting engagement spanned across implementing CERT teams, incident response strategy, security architecture design, IT security management and penetration testing. Welcome to the show, Francois.
Thank you very much, Kim. Really pleased to be here.
So we've had quite a few shows on DevOps before, one of which was Andrew Phillips in episode number 247. There was also episode 221 with Jez Humble on continuous delivery, both of which are good primers for what we're about to discuss today. We'll also link to these in the show notes. So DevSecOps is a topic that's close to my heart, and I've been practicing, preaching and training on for quite a long time. I just never realised it was formalised with a name until recently. Can you, Francois, give us a quick summary of what DevOps is and how the sec part fits in? What is DevSecOps and what does it look like?
So DevSecOps is really about finally implementing security into DevOps and traditional development processes. It's the ability to make sure that security is going to be at the forefront of any requirements, thus avoiding those costly mistakes that we all do and just like thinking about security often after SOT. One way to think about DevSecOps is traditional security has always been about exclusion, need to know, using the security policy to bash people around the head, not to come close to our trade secrets. And what we're trying to do in DevSecOps is really promoting inclusion, working as a team, and ensuring that we're all seeing the same hymn sheet, and it's a team effort, basically. So it's using all the DevOps methodology, as in the iterative processes for our own benefits, and teaching everybody about security. One way to look at it is you just want to break all the silos of security. You just want to give the knowledge to all the different teams and ensuring that security is actually thought about and implemented at the right level and at the right time.
In order to have people embrace an idea and culture like DevSecOps, we need to discuss what is defective with the status quo way of creating and delivering technical solutions. Can you explain for our listeners what's wrong with our traditional delivery approaches, and maybe including some examples of project failures that may not have failed if they took a more DevSecOps approach, and which specific DevSecOps practices would have saved the project?
Okay, so traditional delivery methodology, it's really involving getting code from each of the teams and just merging them together into a final build. And at the end, usually you've got a project manager which is arriving to a security team and saying, hey guys, I completely forgot, but I've got this line item somewhere which is saying get security approval. So as a security team, we've confronted with the fact of we've got to release this product to the market, we've got to make some money for the company, can you please sign up? And then you start digging into the application, the network, and you realize that no security has been implemented. So you end up basically after the QA processes, and what we want to do is bring it back to the beginning, change the mindset to include security at the inception of the project. So if you think about non-functional requirements, that's where we want to be. If you think about those first initial meetings when a developer or product manager has got a crazy idea, that he doesn't only think and speak to the development teams of how they can implement this actual functionality or this new button, but it's also inclusive of security there, which is, yes, you want to give access to all the customers of their data without any kind of authentication, because that's going to be practical. Okay, agreed. And security has always been saying, no, what we want to do is we want to say, yes, you can do things, but we can do them securely. So the way to do it is give them your security policy, give them your requirements, and they will start thinking of security from the start of the project. Examples of how it went wrong, I think there's just millions. And unfortunately, the time of when did it go right, that's quite rare. So number of breaches that could have been avoided, it's again by the millions. We will talk about it later, successful implementation of how we can do that. It's basically give your knowledge, give your tools, and let the DevOps team, let the operational team run them. There is no reason for a security team to run the tooling apart, to be completely on an out-of-band management network, rather than using the methodologies of service management that the traditional company is using. So it's use the tools that you've got at your disposal already. The CI/CD, for example, is just fantastic from a security point of view. It's instead of doing your pen testing at the end of traditionally, security has always been about pen testing. So you finished all your products and you just, let's do a pen test, let's get a scoring. Then you end up with a list of, 700 bugs that they've got to fix. And the project manager is looking at it, but if I implement all those fixes, I'm going to be late. The company is not going to be happy, so let's just forget it and we'll do that in the next iteration. But the next iteration was not always in the same sense as DevOps we're doing. It's more about using the sprint. So I hope that makes sense. It's really about, it's the culture of saying yes.
So Francois, what's wrong with retrofitting or attempting to bolt on security to a project when it's nearing go live, or even once it's been released, and we get a better picture of where our security defects are?
So if you think of development lifecycle like following a CI/CD methodology, security will end up right at the end, and you will end up building all your applications, you've built your logging pages, but for example, nobody thought about the compliance requirements that we've got, or you've got the PCR requirements that you've got. And suddenly you've realized that all the credit card data has been stored on a text file, because that's really easy to actually access from an application point of view. That's how it's been developed. That's how the guys did it when they developed it. They put it on an Amazon bucket, which, most of the time is going to be accessible by everybody. Because when you implement authentication, that's going to create some issues for your development team, not necessarily understanding how to manage your SSH key correctly. There's been a few examples of companies that got completely brought down. So one that springs to mind in CodeSpace. So CodeSpace was a trading company, and they had not only all the application and all the systems on an AWS bucket, but also the backups. Unfortunately, they just put the keys, the encryption key, into a public area. So somebody quite malicious basically got all of the keys and just deleted everything. So the companies, the backup, this company closed down in a matter of days, and they can't recover from this. So they lost everything. That's the type of issues that you've got. We don't want to end up like this. You don't want to be the next Yahoo. If you think what Yahoo is doing at the moment, they've had to actually reduce the price of sale to Verizon by something like $500 million. That's quite significant. That's a few bonuses of developers and security people. So we want to avoid that, and that's how really we want to give our knowledge from a security point of view. So security was always, we're sitting on an ivory tower, nobody's going to come close to us. People were asking you, why do we need to implement authentications? Because that's written in the security policy. And it's about, why is it written in the security policy? What are the consequences of it? So it's really just like strip yourself bare and just explain to developers just like why we're doing it. We're not just a bunch of people wanting to say no. We just, some people that just actually just studied security wherever we could, or actually learn on the go, and we need to give this knowledge. There is teaching a security person how to code. It's going to be much harder than teaching a developer how to code securely. So if I take myself as an example, I couldn't code properly, and if I want to actually just go into this, that's going to take me years and years to arrive there. But through trainings that I've delivered to development teams, they picked up security really quickly, and the quality of the applications, the results that you get from a pen testing engagement before security and after security being taught to the development teams is really impressive.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've been called into so many organisations with development teams struggling to produce solutions with a measure of security. In many of these cases, there is no security-focused people within the organisation at all. And for the cases where there are, the security people are always in their own team separate from the development teams. What are the dangers of siloing development and security teams, and how does DevSecOps propose the relationship between developers ops and security professionals work?
So I think the way to do it is start by sitting with each other. So I've done lots of incident response, lots of forensics, and you're sitting in a glass box somewhere. Nobody can see actually what you're doing. But suddenly you dig a bit further into it. The administrator, which is in the operation center, can actually see everything on your screen. The data is there. You can't hide it. And why should you just hide everything? Yes, you've got some investigation which are quite data sensitive, especially around employment. But all the rest, really, just teaching to them. There's nothing secret. It's the only thing we're trying to do is to avoid those breaches. So working in silos, that never worked. So, and one of the problems that we've got as well is the quality of security people. And I've got to be careful here, but many of the CISOs in plenty of companies, which are still running at the moment, CISOs are coming from a management background. They're not going to know anything technically. So they're not going to be able to defend it. They're not going to be able to defend a budget. They're not going to be able to teach the board what is the value associated with a breach. That's what you need to do. So I come from a really strong incident response point of view, and incident response has been used to actually to protect the complacency of other teams. So the development team is going to realize that there is a problem, or a pen test identified an issue and just give it to the development team. They're going to say, no, let's just put it on the background and just ask the IR guys to actually just create some rules on the IDS system so they can monitor us, and they will tell us when somebody is trying to use this particular back functionality. That's too late already. The speed of the computer, the speed of the packet is not something a human can actually follow with his eyes or follow with his hands on the keyboard. So just automate it. So you use the methodology of automation for the benefit of security. So as we're talking about the CI/CD, it's really about you realize that you've got those attacks coming on against those particular aspect of your website, of your application, including part of the QA process. Just give the attack pattern to your developers for them to actually change the application accordingly. It's not really hard. And so you use there all your security champions. So security champions is about security is going to teach one of the developers about security itself, and just how they can disseminate this information to the rest of the team. So that's one way to do it. And it's really about knowledge sharing. You can also organize some CTF, make them excited about them. I used to work in a different company, do high frequency trading, and the gamification there was really about how many bugs they can find in application, to the point where we've been running those CTF for about 2 years, and we implemented I think we had 5 known issues that we wanted them to discover. And one of the guys came back with about 10 of them. And at this point, I was like, wow, okay, respect, they got it. And then they get excited. And those people that found those issues, they become your security champions. They realize that, well, they get a free t-shirt, but not only a free t-shirt, they can get a certification. We will sponsor them to actually learn more about security.
Have you found that often security professionals that are not integrated into the development team, that are in a separate security team, are often thought about as the developers and and development teams with disdain and lack of respect. Is that something you've come across?
Oh, every day. It's the security team, normally the team, they know that the team that says no, they don't say anything else. When somebody approaches your desk, it's just, oh, no, you can't do that. That's really crazy. What kind of idea is that? Well, suddenly you realize, if you just think about the business is here to make some money. So those functionalities that the project manager or product manager is actually trying to implement, there is a good reason for that. They just really want to make the businesses more efficient, or they want to get some more customers. So by giving the ability to the security team as well to be part of those decisions, to be part of those discussions, you're helping everybody to break those silos. One of the first things I do when I join a company as a contractor is I try to attend as many stand-ups as I can to understand what is in the horizon, what are we going to do in the next 15 days? What do I need to consider to help the developers for them to get better? And security should not be separated. That's the key part of everything. Forget this need to know. Well, apart from a few areas where we've got to restrict the information, but just like give your knowledge. It doesn't cost you anything. It's for everybody, this knowledge.
Can you explain what shifting security left means?
That's been a big buzzword at the moment. So shifting security left simply is, so if you start from left to right to do your development, and as we were talking at the beginning, you've got security which is bolted on at the end, and it's just like put a badge and some say, you've been certified, well done. It's really, you start from the NFRs, so you start from your non-functional requirements, you start from your requirements phase, where you explain, okay, we're going to be dealing with financial data. Right, guys, we've got to think about the PCI requirements. Not the PCI requirements on version 1, which was you need to have a firewall, but it doesn't need to have any network going through. We need to think about the new type of compliance here, which is like, how do we actually implement security that makes a change? And that's really the essence of it, which is just like start from the beginning with all the different teams. Be part of the change.
So isn't shifting security left going to slow the development process down and ultimately cost the organisation more?
I think initially there's going to be a learning curve where suddenly this security person is going to be asking lots of questions, as usual. We do love to ask plenty of questions. So there is going to be an initial lag into the development process. But if you think about the cost of implementing security later on, that's completely different. It's just like fixing a bug in production, that's going to cost you a fortune. So that's going to be, we're going to have to stop production, we're going to have to redo QA processing, we'll have to redo all our artifacts, we'll have to do all your version control again, you'll have to do all your documentation. If you do it at the beginning, whilst everything is just being built, you've got the ability to just reduce this cost ultimately. So by shifting left your security, by discovering issues and bugs at an earlier stage, you can easily incorporate part of your QA process, and the company will actually grow. So the additional lag that you will experience into those requirements meeting, that's going to go down, but also the cost of fixing security is going to be much lower. So it's ultimately you're going to gain some money. I haven't seen any of my customers that were not pleased with the implementation, and especially the product managers. They just love that and say, I don't need to hear about security. I don't need to hear about the traditional pen testing that is going to occur at month 3, month 6, month 9. It becomes built in. So you build in your security to just make sure it doesn't cost you less at the end.
So we've had lists of the most commonly exploited defects like SANS Top 25 and the OWASP Top 10 since about 2003. The same types of trivial defects are still the most often exploited, but our development teams are still introducing the same defects to the solutions they're delivering. Is DevSecOps the answer, and why?
So DevSecOps is part of the answer. DevSecOps is really emphasizing the fact that you've got to do, for example, you've got to do threat modeling. And threat modeling is actually quite fun. And if you get your development teams on board of just understanding how you do your threat modeling, they're going to start thinking about it, and they can incorporate those tests part of QA. It's really easy. So all your OS top 10 and top 25, you can actually just incorporate part of your QA process, give them the ability to test it for themselves. So one of the best time I had in a company was where I've given all my security tools to the DevOps guys. It's just like, look, guys, I don't need to run any of the vulnerability management services. I don't need to just be there to actually press the button. You do it, because you're going to need to do it at scale, at speed, in an iterative processes. My security team is going to be busy doing some other things. Once you actually give access to those tools, the security team just fix the requirements for them to just to match. So we're going to say, oh, you allowed X number of defects, you allowed X number of security issues. Usually it should be close to zero. But I think the important is, it's not the zero defect, it's the zero variation. So what we're going to build, and that's why we're always talking about shift security to the left, where from the start, where you build your application, you've done your threat modeling, you've done all your testing, if you haven't got any variation by the end of the day, you know what you've got, you know what you're finishing with. Then you actually combine this with metadata that you've been accumulating all the way through your CI/CD. That's going to benefit all your IR team. So your incident response team is just going to have the ability to actually dig onto this metadata and say, I've got a problem with this server because this is the type of services or software, this is the level at which it's running. You've got the ability to actually do an incident response really quickly. But if you go even further, your DevOps guys, your operations guy can actually reconfigure the server themselves, because you've just given them the methodology. So if you think about those different type of methodology of threat modeling, like PASTA, Stride, it's really about attacking your systems and just see how it reacts. Then you incorporate it part of your QA. So security doesn't need to be part of that at all. You slowing down the project, which is key for everybody. It's security has got a bad name, to be honest. Let's be completely honest. We haven't been the most efficient type of industry. Well, lots of people made lots of money out of creating some tools which are bolting on, and you end up with those bolt-on Lego type of security, rather than just actually wanting to change things. And that's the aim of DevSecOps. It's just like, look, take our knowledge, change it. We want to do things differently. We're just here to help. We're not here to say no.
Security exploitation continues to advance, and the attackers are constantly developing more advanced attacks. But most of the development teams I work with still don't know what a trivial defect and exploit looks like, let alone how to prioritize and potentially fix it. Can DevSecOps save us from this situation? If so, how? And do you have any success stories where you've seen a development team and their organization transformed from a poor performing, low security unit to a high performing, security conscious team and organization?
So DevSecOps again will help into this. I'd make people aware of what are those security, what are the consequences? What are the consequences of an SQL injection attack or cross-site scripting? And you're perfectly correct in the fact that most of the developers don't understand it, don't even know about it. And that's at the developers level. So once you've got a breach that's affecting your company, and usually you will have a security analyst standing in front of the board and telling them, hey guys, we had a cross-site scripting and somebody stole all our money. And the board is just looking at it and like, what is he talking about? And it's just like, you've got to do this democratization of security. You've got to change it. And it's really just use plain words. Use the same words as everybody else. And it's just like, well, the guy actually got the crown jewels. Oh, right, okay, got it. That's quite easy. So success stories, there's quite a few success stories. There's just one of them where we had to implement a DDoS protection. And what we realized is the routers were just actually not able to cope up to a certain level. It's some of the key things that you found when you're reading RFCs. It's quite interesting. And a developer is not going to read the RFC really. It is just like people like security people. They've got, I'm not going to say enough times on their hand, but it's just the passion to actually read between the lines, to just understand what are the intrinsic details of the protocol. And we were really struggling from security point of view, just like this constant DDoS and how to just mitigate it. And really good DevOps guys managed to combine information that was coming from our network behavioral systems towards the routers. So they were able to say, well, we're going to reach this threshold. This is the switch that you're going to make over. This is you're going to change the bandwidth available. For example, you're going to change to what server the information is going to be processed onto. And that was not done from the security guys. The security guys only said to them, that's the problem. And remember that a network engineer, he specializes in network engineering. So use the information, let them make the decision. The same as a developer. It's let them make the right decision on how to write the code. Slight caveat here is just like we've got to tell them which function is good and which one is bad. But again, that's down to us to actually teach them why you shouldn't use printf, etc., etc. So it's really about communication, and we are saying at the beginning, and entertain them, make them realize what happened when you use these kind of things. And all this, you can link it back to, yes, does it cost money? Yes, it does cost money. It does cost money to actually teach people, and we all been to university, we know it costs money. And you don't stop learning when you come out of university. You do that all the way through your life. So everything that you learn, give it to the other people. It's not your knowledge. Oh, make it public, write a blog about it, make people interested in it. And I think that's the key to make security better for the company and for the greater good.
So do you have any tips on how you can transform poor performing team that has, I guess, minimal focus on security to a high performing team with a good focus on security?
So there's two aspects to that question. First one I'm going to think about is just poor performing security teams, which are actually not good enough to actually teach the rest of the business of how to do security properly. There's a few answers to that. I'm going to skip the first one because I'm not going to make a lot of friends. But it's really about just like, what are you defending? Learn what you're defending. Once you understand what you're defending, understand what type of regulations you've got to comply with. If you look at the other side, which is poor performance team, or not necessarily poor performance, but how your development teams are not really understand security here. And again, I'm going to repeat the CTF here. Just inter-exchange the teams. Make the security team part of your development teams. So break it out. Don't let them just like be on the ivory tower, as we were saying before. It's just like, be happy to be part of the development teams and understand what they're trying to do. Speak to your project manager, speak to your product manager. Your product manager actually is quite interested in security, and security nowadays become this kind of added value for companies. They're starting to understand that, yes, you can provide a great functionality, you can just provide access to all the information of the world, but if you provide it securely, that's going to be your selling point. And everything is about selling. Everything is about making some money. Let's be completely honest here. So if you can actually just build this in, you're a winner. And that's the thing. One of the way to think about security is the same as sustainable agriculture. So you've got your soil, and you can get whatever you want from your soil. It's just like up to a certain level. And as the level of population is actually growing, we wanted to make it more efficient. We wanted to be able to grow any type of grain anywhere we wanted. So we had this great idea about fertilizers. Oh yeah, okay, right, we can fight against this bug, and we're just going to put this fertilizer. Think about your fertilizer as your pen tester. And they're just coming in, they just put the fertilizer, and they realize like 15 years later, oh bugger, nothing's growing anymore. And you're like, well, that's what happened. Your pen tester, and I was a pen tester myself, so I can talk about, you just come in, you just do your job, you just give your recommendation, and you go away. And that's how DevSecOps is trying to do it. It's just that we're here for the long term. We're here to understand that, no, there is no point trying to grow this type of grain onto this type of soil. We need to understand the type of grain which is growing in this soil and how we can make the best out of it. So that might be a bit pushing it. I just love sustainable agriculture. And I think we need to think about it that way, as in we need it. You need your agriculture, you need your security to make things better. So let's work together.
So I've found that like adding a specific set of processes and practices like security regression testing and security focused TDD and evil test conditions and a bunch of other things have actually improved return on investment for the development teams delivering projects, so they can actually deliver projects faster, and then the byproduct is actually a lot fewer bugs. Is that something you've come across?
Yes, yeah, no, definitely. So OWASP has been really good to actually provide all this information. For example, all those little tooling, those teaching ability. For example, like give the juice shop to people. Just let them play with it. Let them understand how does it react. How does the system react? But also, as you were saying, your TDD are just really. If you do that, this is going to be to happen. Once you can, so you've got this great thing from security where we've been monitoring. We've been loving monitoring and accumulating data and terabyte of data, and nobody's actually doing anything with it. But actually, if you analyze this data, you've got the ability to see the type of attacks coming through. You can see the patterns. Give this information to your development team. So many years ago, I used to work for a big ISP, and we reserved, I think there was about 1 million IPv4 addresses, just geared towards creating honeypots. And those honeypots were actually a wealth of data. Yes, the rest of the population in the world is completely going to hate that. We've been using those IPs just for ourselves, where everybody's running out of them. But by using this information, we're able to actually give it back to the antivirus vendors and say, this is a new strain of viruses that we can see at the moment. This is a new trend of attacks that we're seeing at the moment. So I think the more people are going to do that, but not from a commercial point of view. That's the problem. It's just like everything is really commercial. And yes, we've got to make some money. But the more we make this information available to everybody, the more we're going to be improved those TDD, and the better the return on investment you're going to get on security. It's security needs to change from making money for themselves to saving money from the company. It's we all in the security world we all say it. It just is nothing better than a breach. That's when we're getting all the money in the world. That's where we're getting all the funding. But we shouldn't wait for that. It's quite easy to calculate the cost of a breach before, at a high level, before it actually happen. And don't use that to scare people, but use it as an investment money to teach the rest of your team. Then you can just gather all this data and make the developer better. So in one of the companies I worked, the best was when we managed to reduce the number of security monitoring folks from 10 to 5, from 10 to 2. And that's really good because everybody else is doing it. You incorporate your work as part of somebody else's workload. You use the tools. So you can see your pen testers are going to realize that they've got this information. They can actually send it part of your rally or part of any kind of bug tracking facility for them to actually work upon. Use the tools from the rest of your company. Don't isolate yourself with just your own private tools that just nobody can access. It's just give this information away. And as you were saying, you're going to see the return on investment really quickly.
I've found that the closer you get the security people to the development process, the cheaper the development process becomes. So you can have your external development team, but still part of the same organisation, and it's more expensive than having security built into the development team. And then you've got your external pen testers, which are not part of the organisation, and then it's even more expensive again. Is that something you have found?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think one of the problems we've got is all those big system integrators. It's going to take, and sorry, all system integrators, it's going to take a while to actually change the mentality that they've got. They realise that they can get workforce from there, they're all coding the same way. And they're not thinking, and they've got the security team, which is completely separated, where really there is a great synergy between those two teams. It's just mix them up. Make them part of one team. Maybe instead of having a developer team and a security team, you have teams which are driven by product. this is the functionality that we've got to build together. So I need in this team a developer, a product manager, project manager, security folk, and I need a representative to the board. Here you go, then you've got it. But there might be other ones that I've completely forgotten here. But instead of making it as one team fighting against each other, that doesn't work. It's you create tension, and once you've got tension, you've got this really bad competition between the team. The developer is going to tell you, hey, yeah, we're just creating money. You security, you're just costing us some money. So, yes, we are. Okay, agreed, hands up. But by working together, we're working for this company X, and we're making a software or an application better. So we should all look at the outcome of what we're trying to do, rather than just identifying ourselves to a development team or security team.
Support for SE Radio comes from the O'Reilly Velocity Conference. Join over 2,000 developers and engineers in San Jose from June 19th through the 22nd to learn how resilience engineering can make your systems more scalable, reliable, and efficient. Get the latest on containers, microservices, infrastructure, cloud, DevOps, systems engineering, security, and more while you meet experts and network with peers. Use discount code SE20 to save 20% on your gold, silver, or bronze pass. That's SE20. Get all the details at velocityconf.com/CA.
So, Francois, you mentioned a juice shop before. Can you just explain for the listeners what that is?
Yeah, so the juice shop, that's one of the many projects from OWASP, which is an internationally insecure web app for security training. You've got many of them. You had before the Acme Bank, the Denver Vulnerable application, and this one is really written in Node.js and Angular, and it's orientated at users, like giving them challenges and understand how they can exploit different security vulnerability. It's helping for those CTF. And that's some of the great things really is that OWASP is doing. It's really about giving the ability to somebody to learn. So those, I use them quite a lot, as in, hey guys, come and hack me. So come and hack me. Come and understand what is the issue. And that's what we were saying at the beginning about giving the developers the ability to just have a bit of fun. It's actually quite funny when you just manage to exploit somebody and suddenly you just pop a shell and you're just like, yes, got it. And that's what the Juice Shop is about. It's really about helping people understand security, how they can exploit it, and how to make things better.
Yeah, it's an excellent learning tool. What are the costs of introducing DevSecOps practices into an organisation, and how do the benefits outweigh the costs?
So the cost, as we're saying, is going to be about the initial lag. I can't really put an actual number of it because it's going to depend from every company. But that's going to you're going to have to slow down the organization at the beginning. You're going to understand where they're trying to go, and that's when the development process is going to slow down a little bit. There's going to be some learning curve. There's going to be those introduction, as we're saying, the Juice Shop, part of those work with the developers. So, but yes, this initial cost is going to be felt, especially by the project managers. So you're going to have the project manager on your back on a daily basis. So you better be a good friend with him, or make good friend with him. But then you end up with less attacks. So you end up understanding what's your attack surface. Then you end up having the ability to understand the type of attacks which are going to go through. But your developers are going to understand what is this attack surface, and what type of attacks can actually the application can be subject to, and what kind of defenses they can actually build into. So ultimately, you're reducing the cost. As we're saying before, you're reducing the cost of bolting security at the end, stopping all development processes, and having to beg your project manager for a 3 months delay because everybody forgot about the pen testing ability. So it's you will end up with less redundant code, a lesser attack surface. You'll end up with coding the right thing. you will end up with reducing the number of functions that you're doing. So less thinking, less ability. So yes, your developer is here for the creativity, and you should never stop that. But it's your job as a security guy to understand what they're trying to achieve and learn what they're learning. It's the same way they've got to learn about security, is learn about the new functionality, learn about the new languages that they've got. There is going to be this learning curve. Cost, I can't actually give you the number, but ultimately, I assure you, you're going to save some money if you implement DevSecOps methodology.
So do you have any examples of organisations that you've witnessed or been a part of, or even like been an advocate for, and basically converted them from a traditional sort of security reactive focus to something like DevSecOps?
There are a few companies, so a few are quite well known, like Etsy, Capital One, and other ones. I can't mention the name, but they've been at the forefront of making the change. They've been at the forefront of understanding, okay, the company wants to move to cloud. How can we use the cloud to do that? How can we use a Kubernetes to just monitor it as a Kubernetes? How can we use the functionality that we've got within the cloud to actually help our developers not do silly things? And vice versa. It's just, how can a developer help me to build a good security application which is going to answer to their problem? I've seen companies where it's quite amazing, like seeing everybody in the company, and you're going to be talking about 40,000 people doing stand-ups every day, including the lawyers. So you will just walk around the floor and you've got like a bunch of lawyers doing a stand-up in the morning. It's like, what is it doing? And that's where you can see the power of it and the power of those really good implementations. And the security folks just floating about, providing this information, providing those requirements to all these guys. And by using all these iterative processes, by using the cloud technologies, we've got the ability to change things. One of the biggest problems that we've got at the moment is IoTs, and we all know that, because IoTs is just really a commodity. So companies have been using really cheap code that you can bolt on onto any kind of device to make it IoT and to make it like internet capable. I think the way to think about it for you and me, that's going to be just add Bluetooth to it. That's going to make it sexy. And it used to be like this, and it's just like, oh, you can have everything. Just you add Bluetooth to it. That's perfect. Put it in a car. And they had there. I don't know if you remember the one where there was something about the ability to measure how inflated your tires on your car were via Bluetooth. Then we realized that you can actually just use that to actually deflate it. Great. And I think we're facing exactly the same thing with the IoT, which is just like, you've had those hairbrush that got an IoT. It's just like, well, why? Why do you need it? Who needs to know how many times do I brush my hair or my beard, and how strong do I do it? It's totally irrelevant. So I think it's, again, a trend that we're facing at the moment. Well, you need a bit of regulation, but I think let's not do the regulation again like PCI. Let's not do the regulation like those everything that we had within the medical industry. We need to really change it and think about it. I think one of the best example that we had is the medical industry. We all know that those things needs to be patched. It's like, well, okay, great. And you will have your traditional security guy, which is going to say, you need to patch this ventilator, which is keeping this person alive. So, right, okay, so if I patch it, I need to bring in a fly and this person is going to die. Okay, I didn't think about that one. So, and that's what we were saying before, which is just like, need to understand what your company is building. You need to understand what you are defending and how you need to change your approach accordingly. So in the medical industry, things are actually changing. They're actually trying to make some new regulation, I think, in the US Congress. So I think we should watch out these things quite closely, the same for IoTs, because it's a bit ridiculous. Remember, an IoT is something which is going to be accessible by everybody else. So it's not going to be really safe by default. Again, implementing security on it, more code, more testing, unless you do it from the beginning, where you're thinking, right, I want to create a hairbrush which is going to be connected to the internet securely, so only I can know about it. Still don't know why, but it's only you going to be able to have this information. That's the same with everything else, which is like, yes, you can store my data, but prove me it is secure. Prove me you're holding it securely, which most of the time they can't do.
Yeah, I think as users we need to demand a lot more from our IoT devices in terms of security. So where is the cheapest point in the software development lifecycle to deal with all types of defects, including security? And can you explain why it's the cheapest point?
So the cheapest point is at the requirement phase. It's where we link up into the shift security to the left, which is, this is the data we're going to deal with, this is the functionality we're going to give with, this is the information that we want to provide to the person. So that's when security needs to be invited at the table for those projects. Yes, you can't have as many security people as you've got developers. That doesn't make any financial sense. But we need to just explain ourselves. We need to provide this information and be clear to everybody. Write some NFRs for everybody. Write some security principles. So those security principles, I think last time I wrote some for government organization. There was 15 of them, and that's it. And actually, every functionality that a developer will want to build can refer to those 15 principles to make an application secure. So it's all about give away your security policy. And again, don't just use this security policy to bash people around the head. Teach them while it's here. That's cheaper. That's much cheaper. And then suddenly, we're not going to end up with security being a dying breed. We're going to end up with security being more about hunting for threats, understanding more threats, and communicating them accordingly. Lots of traditional security has been the echo chamber. Their own echo chamber. Say, oh wow, look how great I am. I've managed to deflate those tires with this new exploit that I created. It's like, great. What's the solution? How do we fix it? Where do we fix it? And as you were saying, we fix it right at the beginning by saying, I should not give the ability for anybody else apart from me to deflate or inflate my tires. That's kind of logic. So it's, to conclude, is really just, yes, do it at the beginning. It's going to be cheaper. Fixing an issue in production, recalling 150 million automobile cars, it's not really effective. That's the cost of bad security implementation. That's billions. And that's the problem. So if you think of the old scandal that you've got at the moment, what they call the Dieselgate, somebody was quite clever and just created this piece of software and say, like, no, if you get tested, just say everything is cool, there is no security problem here, there's no emission. Now it's costing them billions and billions to actually correct that. Maybe some part of the business are going to go down. And that's what we've got to watch out for. That's what we've got to make the business aware. It's just like, you can't really lie to the public. Well, you can lie for a certain time. That works. We all seen it. But ultimately, you're going to pay the cost for it. And you're not going to pay the cost once. You're going to pay the cost by billions. And companies will go down. Hopefully not all the car manufacturers are just playing the same games. But that's what we've got to watch out for.
Can you think of any other benefits of bringing the security focus from the end of the software development lifecycle up front to within the development team's iterations? And do you have any success stories there?
Other than the one I've said, really, it's you're gonna see less of security, and if you're a developer, really, that's a benefit. Trust me. I think we all know it. Having the security folks just like on your desk every single day because they found a new issue, it becomes quite tedious. And also as a security folk, really, it's just like going to the same person, going to the same team with the same problem on every single application, every single project. I think you should look at yourself in the mirror and say, maybe I'm not communicating it properly. Maybe that's my fault. So actually just like change the conversation. Just speak to your developer and say, what don't you understand? Not what don't you understand about what I said. It's just like, how can I help you to understand my requirements? It's turn the tables around. You not, as a security folk, you're not the better person. Not necessarily. The developer is really trying to do his job. Our security is trying to do our job. But let's not confront each other. Let's work together. And all the companies where we've implemented DevSecOps, you've ended up with some tensions at the beginning, but which we quickly resolve by making the other people understand the need for it, how cheaper this is going to be, and how you're not going to see as much of me, which is always a benefit for everybody.
Do you have any stories where implementing DevSecOps practices has caused negative results? So more time spent focusing on security means less time coding, right?
Unless you develop security as code, which was one of the first principles from DevSecOps. So Shannon Leeds that created the organization, the foundation of DevSecOps. The motto of DevSecOps is security as code, which is, well, you guys, you're coding, so let me actually change my security as code, and you can implement it part of your application, make the application defend itself, become anti-fragile. That's the point. It's just like you need to benefit from the information you're going to get. So an attacker is just going to leave a trace. He's going to leave a pattern. He's going to leave an indication of what is going to happen. Use this data. And this data, transformed as code, is going to make your application better. So no, I haven't got really a lot of experience where we'd gone wrong at all. It always worked. And I think that's why we're seeing more and more people about DevSecOps and just like how to implement it and how to work together, because it's beneficial for companies. Unless, I don't know, I'm always happy to hear different things, but I haven't seen any adverse effect of implementing security from the beginning.
So how do you go about changing the mindsets of the traditional thinking managers, developers, and security pros that want to continue to throw deliverables over the wall to the next team rather than combining all necessary skills into each team?
Show them how much it costs, and use the standard terms that what they're saying is just delays. Think about a traditional waterfall, and when you're arriving into the critical path and everybody is just up in arms, and usually just like in your critical path somewhere between the day before release and release, that's where you've got the security check here. Show them actually just like this should be somewhere else, this should be much bigger, or actually we can make it better. This security, which is like just in a critical path, that should be somewhere else. That should be at every part of your sprint. That should be built in your processes. That should be built in your development processes. That's it. It's not really. It's not magic. It's just like the quicker and the more often you're going to do it, the more issues you're going to find, the less this is going to cost you to actually remediate them. It's instead of constantly branching out, branching in, you've got the ability to just make people understand why security is there, how they can implement it, and automate it. So I think you need to move away from all this big pen tests which are taking 3 months and just 1 month of reporting and 2 months of discussion around the table why nobody should actually implement any of it, which is not beneficial for anybody. So if you actually build it in your code, if you actually just incorporate your security part of your development processes, part of your product manager should know about security, should understand the value. And one of the best ways to actually show them is the delays incurred by not implementing security, or the delays incurred by, look guys, we've got to put the website offline because we've just been hacked. How many millions are you going to lose? Working in financial sector for a long time, it's if you're not online, if you can't trade, that's going to cost a lot. And you're talking millions per day. That's one way to show it. And usually it all comes back to money and time which is wasted. Think about the AWS outage that you had the other day, where that was a typical example of no redundancy has been implemented, where people relied on the redundancy built into AWS to actually monitor the things. And that was the best time for the developers and for any operation guys, because there was just like, I can't tell you what's wrong because we put all our eggs in the same basket. If somebody built the architecture correctly, they would have been able to say, well, again, we need this kind of out-of-band management. We need to understand how we can just change it, how we can monitor it without relying totally on one technology or without relying totally on one company. So architecture is also really key of how you can implement security and how you're going to run a company efficiently.
So I'm thinking I want to embrace the DevSecOps culture and practices. How do we combine DevSec and Ops? Like as a new team that's coming from the traditional approaches, where do we start?
Okay, so the first thing is make them sit down together. So, all those partition walls that we all loved and everything, just like nobody can actually see what you're doing, and you can put the pictures from your kids everywhere. It's just like bring them down, not the pictures of your kids, but actually those walls which are there, and make them communicate. What are the best way to communicate is just those stand-ups. Stand-ups is really good methodology where we've got to actually the ability to express what we're working on and how somebody can actually help us work more efficiently on it. So it's mostly about communication and advance warning. It's about you product managers being all-encompassing of all those teams, and just like making sure that they don't forget security. Start by building non-functional requirements with all the different teams, just like not just, as I was saying before, not just the security ones, but the non-functional requirements from a DevOps point of view, from a development point of view, and also from a security operational point of view. So the security operations traditionally has been you're just sitting at your desk, you've got 17 screens around you, none of them are actually using the same metrics, none of them are using the same data points. So combine those things, just like there is going to be a pattern, there is a way to combine this information coming from the IDS with the rest of the logs that you're getting. So it's really about transparency. It's about giving the ability for other people to see what you're seeing and make them aware of it. Make them aware that, oh yes, you've got this data. I remember one day where one of the developers asked us and said, hey guys, can we get access to your IDS data? So the first answer was just, whoa, why do you want that? It's all secret. And then you realize it's just, well, actually they can benefit from it because they're going to see what problems we're seeing. Then they're going to understand why we're throwing these things over the fence. And it's just like, hey, go and fix that because we can see that you've got this type of attack which has matched the new pattern developed by the new Snort tarball that we downloaded this morning. It's like, well, yeah, but actually we just tailored, we just changed the protocol in a certain way. So that's why you're getting a false positive here. So bring down those partitions, make them talk with each other. Communication is really undervalued, and that's one of the biggest problems in all the companies. We created the silos. Silos, yes, there was good reason for those. Why? Good reason. There were some reasons why they were created. You can measure the productivity, you can measure the effectiveness of a company, of a certain team. But actually, you should measure the productivity as by the quality of the work that you achieve together, not what an individual team is producing. So the developers will develop like 57 functionality in a day. Great. But then you realize that, as always, the security team has been completely understaffed, and there is one poor guy which is trying to analyze everything at the same time as just getting data for 170 IDS sensors from around the world and can't make sense of it. So most of the times they're just going to let go of it. They're not going to see the pattern before an incident is occurring. So make your developers part of the security team, make your security guys part of the developers, make them work together. It's actually not complicated.
So how do we go about shifting the security focus left or bringing it up front within each and every sprint?
Be more transparent. So it's, as we were saying before, it's really about make yourself part of those discussions, understand what they're trying to build, understand how how and what functionality, what functions they want to implement. Make some research. It's security folks. We've got to go back to our books quite a lot and just make some research on what they're trying to implement. What are they trying to achieve? So that's always the question asked, which is like, okay, that's all fair and well. You want to do that, but what are you trying to achieve? What is your ultimate goal? And then you realize that the ultimate goal is for them to get more data. It's like, oh, great. Actually, yeah, I would love a bit more data. So it's be part of those initial discussions and don't be afraid to ask questions. It's not the awkward questions as usual, saying like, oh, what are you trying to do that? But more about, oh, let me help you. How can we work together to actually make it more secure? Why are you trying to use this functionality? We've got this data already. No, you don't need to collect all this data. You don't need to log everybody's passwords. There is no need for it, especially not in plain text. Explain them why. And then you will actually just like, you're going to save some money. You're going to make everybody else happy. As we're saying, just like catch them earlier before they start implementing Bluetooth on your tires. That's the best way to do it.
So what challenges and obstacles do teams face in moving security to the front of the development process within each and every sprint, and how can they go about overcoming these?
So I think that's the traditional design and coding. That has been the mindset of people. That is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. This silo mentality, the fact that the people are still thinking of QA is a certain place, security is at the end. Just rejig it. Just think about how we can use these iterative processes for each of them, for all of us, for our own benefits. So every time you've got a development team which is building a new functionality, just like security should be there at the same time, testing for any security issues, then provide the feedback in a timely manner. This is going to speed up everybody. This is going to speed up the resolution time. This is going to speed up the communication. This is going to speed up the resolution. And this is going to speed up ultimately the deployment in production. But don't forget the traceability of all of them. So we were talking earlier about metadata and just how we can use this metadata for incident response, for developers. So it's important to actually capture this data so people can actually benefit from it. It's embrace the change, as we always say. It's one of my company, their motto was change energizes us. There was a different background for that, is because they changed names about 15 times in 5 years. But actually just it's really energizing people. Learn about those new technologies. When I first came across many years ago on CI/CD, across CI/CD, I was like, that's brilliant. That's helping me from a security point of view to actually get better quicker. And from a development point of view, that was just like amazing. They've got the ability to just like code more and just test more and just like see better, faster, quicker results, which ultimately is going to provide your company more money, which most of the companies know what they're doing, except if you're in a non-profit organization like DevSecOps.
How have you managed to bring security skills to within development teams when traditionally they haven't been there before?
It's all been about training. So it's really about teaching them what you know. It's challenging. It's really challenging at the beginning, where they don't want to understand why you're trying to implement those further checks. They don't understand why you're trying to slow them down because they haven't seen the outcome. And as we were saying before, it's just like an incident is the best that one happen for a security team. Usually the creation of a security team starts from an incident that occurred. So you've got a massive incident, suddenly the CEO is going to say, wow, I read this article on CEO magazine X and we need to implement security. We're going to start by monitoring everything. And we're going to slow down the processes. We're going to implement some pen testing at the end, and everybody's going to be happy. So we will have some certifications. It's just, okay, right. That doesn't really work, but we can provide you certifications. And actually, that's one thing which are changing. Some pen testing companies are actually certifying their works, where they're saying, I will review your code. And for every line of code that I've reviewed, if you get an incident related to the code that I've reviewed, I provide you this insurance of X million to actually pay for your incident response. That's a game changer. That's really security just taking ownership of their work. And I think that's a really good way of doing it, which is we do what we're doing for a good reason, and we can certify our own work. And we certify our own work by just charging ourselves in case it goes wrong. But again, that's traditional security. Those pen testers which are coming here, they should not sit down with your security team where they just like their own echo chambers. Hey, look, I've got this new tool and it's doing that. Oh, wow, that's really sexy. It's just like, no, sit down with the developers to actually do your pen testing. Don't do it remotely all the time. Yes, we all like to work from the beach and just throw over some problems at a development team. Go and sit down with them. Show them what we're doing. I remember doing a pen test 15 years ago when you're just standing up on a data center. It's 17 degrees and you're there with your gloves. And the developers actually came with me to the data center because they wanted to see everything. They wanted to understand why I was using the switches on Nmap. They wanted to understand it. Next things I knew, next time I came to do the pen test, the guys actually just already run all the tools and done all the methodology that I've done. So I barely had anything to find. It was really frustrating. But that's make them interested. Just not necessarily gamify it, but give them a new skill. And to be honest, like a developer that's got security skills, that's going to be great for the market. Everybody's going to want to hire them.
So what about establishing a security champion within the development team? Have you found that that's been successful lifting the security focus within the development team?
Yeah, it's been really great. The problem is the continuity of it. It's a bit like your fire warden in a company. So you've got the guy that's been here for 25 years, and because he's been here for 25 years and he knows all the exit in the building, he just earned this fire warden stuff. There is this complacency, and that's one of the things that we've got to fight against, which is just, look, you've got to always reinvent yourself. And training your security champion, making them rotate, just don't give them like a little statue or a badge and everything. Yeah, you're a security champion now. You've got to constantly train them. Take them with you on conferences. Take them with you on training. Take them with you on a journey of how you implement security, how you learned about those new tooling, and how to break them, how to fix them. So it's a good starting point, but never forget that you've got to constantly train them. If not, there is going to be a fire somewhere, and the fire warden is going to say, "Oh, don't worry, that's Joe having a cigarette as usual next to the AC," and he always just trips out like a false fire alarm. Actually, it's not a false fire alarm. There was a fire this time, and everybody burnt in the building. That's not good, and that can happen with security champions.
Often developers are focused on delivering business value, and security experts are usually focused on pushing that value back because they see defects in it. Developers are often the yes people, and security are often the no people. Do you have an example of how you've been able to make these two often opposing disciplines complement, strengthen, and empower each other?
I think one of the best time, what I said earlier, is when I gave away all the tools from the security team. And as a side effect, like most of the team got made redundant, including myself. But that's just a good consequence in a way. That's a good achievement because you don't need to have. So security has always been about, as you said, the no people, and we've been trying to identify this shadow IT. But actually, we created this shadow IT. We created this shadow IT by creating our own support organization within the security teams. So who's going to maintain the IDS system? The security team. Why should they do that? That should be your normal ops guys, just like maintaining the tooling. So it's about understanding up to what level they can see. So maybe you don't want them to see every IDS data where it's after you've just decrypted or USSL channel and they've got the ability to actually harvest all the cards. But why your security team should see it. there is a good reason, but how do you certify somebody to have access to this data? So give away all those toolings, give away to your developers, to your QA process, your vulnerability management, the threat modeling, work with them to implement it. Don't do it in isolation. Never. This is never going to work. If you do it in isolation, that's the problem we're trying to fix at the moment, which is shift it to the left. Skill up the people. You've got to skill up your developers. You've got to skill up your ops guys to actually understand why you're monitoring it, how you're monitoring it, and what you do in case of an incident. Yes, security professionals, especially from an incident response point of view, are particularly skilled in a certain way. But it doesn't mean that your ops guys can't use TCP dump to actually provide you this packet capture. Or even better, just automate it. Or let them know what they've got to see. Give them some filters on Wireshark of how they can analyze this data for your benefit. And there's been a few times where ops guys actually found the issue before my teams found it. At first, you're feeling a bit awkward. It's just like, oh, wow, maybe I shouldn't have such a big team, and we shouldn't go on those expensive trainings like $6,000 a pop. And then you realize, but I can use those guys. I can reduce all my costs. I can reduce all my workforce because I've got the skills somewhere else. So as you were saying before, ultimately you'll end up saving money by training everybody, by shifting security to the left, by teaching them, by implementing the security champions and developing your security as code. I'm not saying completely automate your security team because it's quite important. But there's plenty of things that we don't need to do in isolation. So it's really promote inclusion rather than exclusion and work together for the greater good.
How long has DevSecOps been running?
DevSecOps in my head has been running for quite a while, but physically started I think the first event we had was on 20th of October 2015. So DevSecOps started out of my frustration of exactly what we've been talking about, which is security not being taken seriously. How do we automate it? And lots of really good discussion with Shannon Leeds from the DevSecOps organization. Then I realized there is no security conference which is not his own echo chamber. I'm not going to name them because they're all really good conferences. I've attended them all. But none of the conferences were actually, how do we change it? How do we change security? How do we make it better and more accessible for everything? So DevSecOps stands for Development Security Conference. So there's been many names on the thing. There was like SecDevOps, DevSecOps, Ops DevSec, etc. And DevSecOps has been running now for 2.5 years. We've had two successful events in London where the attendees have been doubling every year. We just ran our first event in Singapore as well, which was really good. And Kim, you were here as a trainer, which was really good to have you. Next steps for DevSecOps is so we're planning DevSecOps Boston, which is going to take place on the second week of September. This time we're aiming for quite a lot of people and over 2 days to cater for East and West Coast at the same time. And more towards you, we're going to build DevSecOps Sydney. So that's going to be end of spring for you. So that's going to be like end of November. I've had some requests for DevSecOps India. It's really going all over the place. And what we're trying to do is provide the knowledge to everybody for a really cheap price. The aim is just make it affordable, make it accessible. I'm sure, like me, you've done all those security trainings where it's about like $6,000 to attend. You do 5 days, and at the end you've got a really nice certificate. There is value, but not enough value, not enough practical value. So that was the premise of DevSecOps.
Where can people go to find out more about the DevSecOps and DevSecOps?
So DevSecOps is a non-profit organization which is running on devsecops.org. We currently building some curriculum as well. We're asking people to actually help us to build some of those projects of security as code. DevSecOps is running on DevSecOps.com, just about to release a new version of the website, which is going to cover all different kind of, edit point. Yeah, so we're just about to release a new website to actually cover all the different events. I will also announce a DevSecOps training curriculum, which is going to be around 2 days, where we actually taking you on a journey of how to implement DevSecOps, how to change development, and how to make security part of the change.
Do you have any other interesting projects you're currently working on, Francois?
There was a really good one. So Dennis Cruz and Seba and myself decided to redo a NOAA summit. So we're building a NOAA summit, global NOAA summit. So there's going to be about 75, 100 participants, all the best people around the planet. I think you're going to be here, Kim, as well, where we're going to work on lots of working sessions. So you've got threat modeling, you've got all different kind of security facets, projects that we're putting together. And it's basically a non-conference, 5 days, 16-hour days working together, and that's taking place in June around London. So if you're interested, go to oasummit.org. Got all the information there and all our contact details to get involved.
Thanks for coming on today, Francois.
No, that has been lovely, and I think I'll have to come and see you in New Zealand.
Awesome. Cheers.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kim.
Help us make SE Radio even better by completing our short listener survey at www.ieee.org/SE Radio. Thanks. Thanks for listening to SE Radio, an educational program brought to you by IEEE Software Magazine. For more about the podcast, including other episodes, visit our website at se-radio.net. To provide feedback, you can comment on each episode on the website or reach us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or through our Slack channel at seradio.slack.com. You can also email us at team@se-radio.net. This and all other episodes of SE Radio is licensed under Creative Commons License 2.5. Thanks for listening.